First of all, thank you everybody for being here. You all know that I'm Lee Purvis and I work for the PRCA in Yorkshire, and this is my lovely colleague Lisa Wood, who looks after the PRCA North West on a part-time basis. And I think, Lisa, you'll agree that really we wanted to do something quite positive and uplifting to end this year on, because obviously it's been quite tricky for many people in many ways. And really to celebrate the wonderful women who work so hard in communications. We all know, we had some statistics recently from one of our surveys at the PRCA that actually communications, and especially public relations, is driven predominantly by women. And we just really wanted to share stories and swap best practice and talk about the highs and lows of our fabulous panellists' careers to date. I know we don't have long, so I'll crack on. So first of all, I'd love to welcome Managing Director of We Are the Allies. Of course, we're talking Pavan Riyat-Ward. Pav, thank you for being here. Senior Lecturer and Course Leader at Sheffield Hallam for PR. Of course, Carmel, thank you so much. I know you're really busy today. And of course, Channel 4 Publicity Manager, Gemma, Bareham. Thank you very much for being here. It's a really informal chance for us to have a bit of a chit chat really and ask questions. So I'll start if that's okay. And my first question is for Carmel, basically. So you were a former journalist for quite some time, and now you work as a senior lecturer at Sheffield Hallam. And you've seen many changes for women across the industry in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's evolved from the very beginning?
Okay, yeah, and thanks for inviting me to join you this morning. Yeah, as I started in journalism, the Sex Discrimination Act was about 5 years old. So I think a lot of employers hadn't really got the gist or their heads around the idea that it wasn't okay to discriminate in terms of education and employment and training. Things have got better. They've got better very slowly. It's 45 years now since the Act was introduced. It wasn't perfect, but it got us past an important milestone. A couple of examples that probably I hope might shock you, because they don't tend to happen now. When I was a young reporter on local papers in North Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire, I was once called into the office, to my editor's office, and informed that the managing director, this would have been about 1982, 83, so I'm sort of in my 20s, and told that the managing director wanted his female reporters to wear skirts at all times, didn't want to see them in trousers. So that went down like a lead balloon, as you can imagine. And I've always been a fairly arsey sort of operator in terms of being told what to wear. So didn't get very far. But in fact, he felt entitled to suggest it. Tells you something about the atmosphere and what people felt entitled to do at the time. And the other thing I was also called in as a reporter at the time, obviously this is broadly about communication, when being interviewed for a reporter's job, I was specifically asked about whether I had a steady boyfriend. And you think, well, that's actually got nothing to do with you. But this was to do with the idea that I then might, at some point in the next few years, go on to want to have kids and to seek maternity leave. So this again would have been mid-1980s. So you're not talking very long at all. Things have moved on, but they've moved on very slowly. Obviously, we're seeing more women in top jobs, running their own agencies, being directors of agencies, and that's brilliant. And obviously women in senior roles in in-house organisations across the country, and that's great. But I suppose my big worry is we should never assume that we will hold on automatically to the rights that we've managed to achieve so far. They are in peril the whole time. We need to keep raising the flag about sex discrimination and the need for diversity and equality generally, because those rights can be eroded as quickly as they can be achieved. And we see that with things like women's reproductive rights in Poland and in America at the moment, where horrific things are going on and things you might never have imagined. That history is being rolled back. So yeah, things have improved far too slowly. We need more to happen. And in some respects, it's left to us to kind of fly the flag, but things are getting better. I have seen change. Sorry, long answer, sorry.
No, it's fantastic, thank you. And Pav, you've got more than 25 years experience, basically working client side and very much agency side, particularly within marketing and working with incredible brands. How have you noticed a shift in attitudes towards women in the comms industry?
Well, I guess, I've been quite lucky in that at the very start of my career, I had really good management that I guess empowered women in business, and it didn't really hold me back in that, they understood I was a single mum and enabled me to, pick Danny up from school, drop him off at school, but they knew I was going to work incredibly hard. around that, you know. That said, you know, if you think about the creative industries, God, it's, you know, growing at rapid speed, worth billions in the UK. But if you look at, you know, jobs like digital, I guess senior women in marketing and advertising, film and TV, you know, there are still not enough of those females in those roles, I personally think. And you know, there's a lot that we're trying to do, I guess. I mean, we've launched the Allies Academy this year, which we've gone and worked with Leeds and Manchester universities. And we're shocked at how many females there are on these courses, yet then that doesn't transpire into us seeing those in the industry at senior level, especially in advertising agencies where, you know, senior creative directors, for example, in those roles. So we interviewed several students and we got it down to 8, 5 of which are women. Now, you know, they've not just got onto the academy just because they're women, it's because their portfolios were absolutely brilliant and they've had a huge amount of potential. So we put them with mentors across our network so that they get supported, empowered, you know, we open doors for them so they can get work experience. But, you know, there's a long way to go, I think there really is. So I've seen the change, but it's not happening at the speed that the industry's growing, I think.
Thanks. Gemma, have you got anything to add from your experiences, obviously working, you know, at such a diverse place as Channel 4? How do you find that as a woman there?
Well, I think sort of everywhere that I've worked I've always been surrounded by women, and I've been really lucky that I've had really strong female leaders to look up to. Albeit the senior bosses in every team I've ever worked in has always been a man, but everybody else has been female. And in charge. But I think possibly, you know, coming a little bit later into the industry, I'm benefiting from what has gone before. And I just think I've, you know, been really fortunate. And especially within TV, it is a lot of women doing the comms.
Because before you worked in TV, you worked at Penguin Random House, didn't you? And obviously you've taken that move into working television. And you're right, I mean, there are predominantly females that work within communications. What skills do you think we need as women to be successful in communications?
I mean, I don't think women need different skills to men to work in communications. I think it's the same skill set regardless of gender. But for me, the main key skill would be adaptability and organisation before you even get into the relationship, the creativity, and sort of the ability to, my day, like no day is ever the same. And I think I'm really lucky. That's one of the reasons why I really love what I do. But because of that, I have to be able to adapt to any situation, whether it's firefighting an issue one day, doing a creative strategy the next, fielding calls about, I'm looking after the new series of Changing Rooms, which blew up a couple of months ago. So I think the skill set is the same for men and for women.
Good. Oh, it's really interesting. Great start to this sort of chat. So I think I've got a question I want to ask to everyone, and I'll start with Carmel first. Kind of thinking about obviously your career moments. You've had some fantastic positions. Did you work as head of communications for Channel 4 as well? So you've worked in that world.
I worked as a communications manager for Channel 4 for 4 years.
I promoted you then, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Sorry, what was the question?
I'm just sort of thinking for all of you, in terms of when you've worked, and this is not a male bashing thing at all, but when you've worked in environments that are maybe quite male dominated, and I'm not too sure obviously what Channel 4 was like, how do you sort of position yourself and work in that world when you're surrounded by men? Because I was thinking back to when, you know, Margaret Thatcher used to have to try and become quite macho in those scenarios, working with men, and dress quite macho. And you talked about how you dress and how you perceived. But I think actually trying to be yourself when you're working with men is very, very important. I mean, have you got any sort of experience or any examples you can talk about?
The thing that occurs to me is that when I first started in my career, sexism was quite obvious. So discrimination was much more obvious. So now you've got legislation in place, and you know the good organisations have got, you know, committed, stated policies around tackling these issues. So it's kind of more under the radar and more subtle. So it's harder to spot. It operates in camouflage, I think, more so. and I work now for Sheffield Hallam University, and it's a good organisation, but you still get instances where you'll find yourselves, for example, I was in a meeting the other day, actually. I think I was the only course leader in a meeting which was all men otherwise. I asked a couple of questions, and before my questions were answered, another male colleague decided to chip in before that could be responded to. So I had a couple of options there, which was either to kind of sit there and take it, or to say, excuse me, can I have the answer to my question, please? So in some respects, you almost have to sometimes behave out of character in order to make sure that you stand your ground a little bit, which is to say, excuse me, I was talking, excuse me, pay due respect, don't interrupt, let me have my answer. And I almost resent that it makes you have to develop that thick skin, and I don't want to have to behave like a man in order to be treated equally. You know, I want to be listened to without having to be strident and macho and over assertive, but I'm afraid sometimes you still have to in order to be treated properly. So it's just a kind of current example, I suppose.
Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? I've had, because I work in communications as well as the PRCA, and I've had that in various organisations, and it's quite difficult, isn't it? And I think, you know, I've sat in boardrooms full of men and had my hand up against my face almost, and you're like thinking, hang on a minute. And I think when I was much younger, I would have taken a step back and sort of been quite quiet, but as I've got older, I've sort of found that voice and think, no, listen to me, I've got something to say. So that's really interesting. I mean, come to you, Pav, have you got any sort of examples around that?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, like many, sat in boardrooms, meetings with predominantly men, you know, and I haven't changed the way I guess I've behaved. I've just, it's made me, I guess, more driven to be more confident, and, you know, and almost gain that trust to say, look, I am as capable as you are, you know, to do this, and really drive, you know, push to get those ideas through. So yeah, no, see, basically, yeah, it's just being confident and believing in what you know and what you do, and pushing for things, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We do have to fight, I think, sometimes a little bit harder, don't we, to have our voice heard. And Gemma, have you got any examples of that, or anything you want to touch on?
I think it's really bad. Well, it's not really bad. It's really good. It's a really positive thing. But, you know, I haven't had that experience of being the only female in a meeting room, or in any sort of situation like that. As I say, I've always worked in teams that are predominantly female. All my line managers, bar one at the BBC, have been women. And like, I think that's really inspired me as well to, you know, believe that, you know, things are more equal.
Yeah, excellent. And another question to all of you, and I'll start with you again, Gemma. I mean, kind of very topical really with the pandemic. Most of us have been working at home, probably in our sort of communications roles, and which is obviously taking trust from employees, whether that be men or women. And people do need flexibility. Sometimes if women have got kids or people to care for, or whatever their situation may be, and men as well. And do you think this actual period of the last sort of, how many months is it now? 9 months or so, forever, it's never ending. It's kind of changed the way, I know it has with a lot of employees, but has it really sort of changed the way, you know, women who need that flexibility and men that need that flexibility are viewed from an employer point of view?
I think so. I think so. Channel 4 going into 2021, we're going to be experimenting more with flexible working. I think certainly I found from when I first started out at the Press Association and then at Sky, flexibility in media didn't really exist. In, you know, and I'd see friends who worked in the civil service or in banking who were having opportunity to work from home when they wanted. Just life was just made a little bit easier. Whereas for some reason, broadcasting in particular was very much a 9 to 5 at your desk 5 days a week. And obviously, I think this, you know, the recent 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it now is, Channel 4 have now said, well, from next year, we'll look to be much more flexible. But only 2 years ago at the BBC, you know, I managed a team of 8 or 9 publicists, most of whom were mothers, who were having daily fights with management more senior than me, about flexible working and sort of being able to like go to an assembly and come in a little bit later and those sorts of things, which I suspect now will be a lot different for them after the year that we've had.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've worked in the media before, and obviously Lee has, and it's always been that kind of desk type job where you're in it, but I think that's obviously changed that. And I've got friends who work in in film and TV have been working from home as well. So it's good to see that change. What do you think about that, Pav? Do you think this past 12 months, 9 months, whatever it is kind of changed that for the better?
I think so, definitely. I mean, for example, we look after loads of freelancers, and normally they'd have to go into, an agency or a client environment to complete that contract, and they've been working remotely, they've been editing remotely, they've been doing all of the things they would normally do at somebody's desk from home. So I think it's not only, I guess, made flexible working okay, but it's also, I think, made it possible for you to do business with different territories, and you can be doing a job for somebody in Germany. It doesn't matter anymore. You can do it from home. So I think it's definitely benefited, I would say, what we're doing massively.
And Carmel, it must be slightly different for you because obviously in education, I know that's been it must be quite difficult to lecture online. How has that gone for you over the last 9 months?
Yeah, it's been one of the steep learning curves. Lee will appreciate this because she's in the same position. Yeah, we've had to learn a completely new way of working, basically. So we do pre-recorded lectures using screencasting, and we do 3 short clips instead of 1 long lecture, so that it's more digestible and accessible online at a certain time. And then we use Zoom for interactive seminars. So it's not something I thought I would be doing at this stage, but actually it's gone surprisingly well. And there'll be some research done, but anecdotally, students seem to have engaged with it remarkably well. And I've learned a few new tricks into the bargain. I do sometimes get that the students laugh at me, actually get stuck in breakout rooms. So you organise them into breakout rooms for interactive sort of sessions. And I'll go, just pop into the breakout room, and then I get stuck in the breakout room. But it's all part of the fun, we're all learning. It's new stuff and nobody's perfect. So I think we've learned a huge amount. The other thing I'd say is there's nothing particularly new in remote working. In one of the roles you mentioned before, as the Channel 4 communications role I did, I was working mostly from home in South Yorkshire, and then partly at Horseferry Road in London at the headquarters, and then working with communities up in Castleford in West Yorkshire initially. So I was working with a laptop, a phone, and just getting on with this. It's not new, but I think this COVID period has forced employers to a degree to accelerate and be more open to the idea of flexible working in a way that might have taken a bit longer otherwise. And what they're seeing is there's huge benefits. You get loads more work out of people. If you trust your employees to be grown-ups, they will work hard for you. And there's been no alternative. We've had to do it. And I think, as Pavan was saying, lots and lots of benefits, in terms of guest speakers for my lectures for students. It's much easier to get someone to do that accessing via Zoom than it is to get them to traipse all the way to Sheffield. And obviously networking is a lot more easy. Lee and Lisa and Renner at PRCA have set up all sorts of amazing sessions during this year, and speakers from all over the world, which would have been much harder to facilitate had we had to all be in the same spot. So I think lots of really positive stuff to take away from the experience this year.
There is. I think that's really true. Yeah. So I think over to Lee. I think you've got some more questions, haven't you?
I've got millions of questions, so I'll talk quickly. I'll try and not talk too quickly. So many of you know that I started off my career working in commercial radio and tabloids, and for me at the time when I went to work for my first paper, which was the Daily Star many years ago, I was on a female column. I was a columnist for many years there, and I don't know how I managed to stay for 7.5 years, but I do remember ringing my mum that first morning saying, there's all these men, I think they're picking the nose in conference, I don't think I can do this job. And she was like, oh, get on with it. And I did get on with it, but it was extraordinarily tough. And certainly at that time I had a male editor, and I've had some fabulous, fantastic male bosses in my time. But things changed for the better when I had a female editor. And it was almost like an instant acknowledgement. So Gemma, going back to your point about female bosses, there's been some statistics very recently about women and how I know Carmel brilliantly touched on it, and with Pav a few minutes ago as well, about being more assertive. But are women doing enough to support each other? Gemma, what do you think?
I think on the whole, yes. I think certainly my experience is I don't have any children, so I don't have the experience of having to juggle motherhood with working. But I think I have been in environments where it's almost been 2 camps of women. There's the mums and then there's the not mums, and sort of the balance of that, and the understanding that we're all doing the same job, but everybody's lives are a little bit different, and I think sometimes that has clashed, and often it's a man that has to sort it out. But on the whole, I would say women do support other women, and you know, I started originally as a sub-editor, and I've ended up in comms, and I couldn't have done that without the support and mentorship of other women. So yeah, again, my experience will be that we do support each other.
And Pav, I know you work very closely with Chicks in Advertising. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you think women can perhaps support each other a bit more holistically?
Yeah, I mean, so Chicks in Advertising is run by a really talented female copywriter that works at TBWA Manchester. And she set that whole forum up to make sure that there was a support network for a lot of students as well. They have a huge amount of following in terms of students, and offering advice and support and just someone to talk to. You know, she's got to a really senior level within her career. So what advice can she offer to females coming through into the industry? So I think there are forums out there that offer that kind of support. And I think personally, from my point of view, because I was given so much, I guess, support and encouragement to be a female and to succeed in business, it's made me manage my females in the team in the same way. So I think, it's really important that it happens at the top, and you appreciate that you've got a massive role to play to make sure women are given the same opportunities.
And Carmel, how do you feel? Do you think there's enough support out there from women to women?
I think there's always more that we can do in terms of starting out in the industry. I'd say find kindred spirits and build supportive forums, join your professional organisations, the PRCA, CIPR, but build informal networks as well, which is just as important. Those kind of, if you like, by the water cooler conversations that can solve problems and just shore up your confidence. I don't know if anybody else has found this, but working remotely for a long period of time, you don't get those kind of just informal bounce off conversations which can reassure you, solve problems. So I think building those little informal networks are really useful. I'd say be generous to new colleagues coming through. I think mostly I've found in the industry that women do encourage other women, and that's great, but there are the kind of exceptions who kind of draw the drawbridge up behind them, and it's always a mistake, because there's nothing more satisfying than seeing someone that you've encouraged going on to do really well. That's brilliant. So yeah, I'm and it's slightly different. I come from a slightly different setup in terms of I'm not from an agency background. So I've always been a member of a trade union. So I'm in the NUJ and the University and Colleges Union, and that's really helpful. You know your rights. You've got access to legal advice if you need it. So lots of different ways that you can kind of look after yourself, but also encourage and support other people.
Thanks. And Gemma, you have also had quite a lot of different jobs as well in your career to date. How have you sort of tackled any challenging moments that you may have had?
I don't want to keep saying I've been really lucky, because obviously there have been challenges, but I think everybody who probably I have worked with would say that one of my sort of biggest skills is that I'm very calm. So, during my time at the BBC, I was leading a team through a restructure and through a very long, really prolonged period of consultation, whilst I also was going through that. And I think the ability to be able to just remain calm and keep perspective on things. And I kind of sort of, when looking at everybody in that similar situation, I did feel like the women were the ones who dealt with things better. And the ability to sort of juggle things a little bit more freely. But again, I have been quite fortunate. That challenge hasn't been too great for me so far.
Pav, have you had any moments within your career where you felt like giving up? We all have those down days that we've really thought, I've had enough of this, and you've had that epiphany light bulb moment. How have you dealt with challenging times like that?
Oh gosh, I mean, I've got a really good mentor. So Richard Lancaster, I met him at Morrison's trading and marketing director he was at the time, and he's kind of remained my mentor, I would say, through my career. And sometimes you just need someone that's not in the situation and involved, just to get some advice from, or, you know, because you often know the answer, but you just need someone to just bounce those ideas off, you know. So, and I guess just knowing it's all right to quit sometimes, you know, at the end of the day, you can sometimes find yourself in a role that isn't what you thought it would be. And it's fine, it's in your gift to change that, you know. So I've had several crossroads where I've gone, right, it's time to do something different. And I've, you know, I've taken that leap of faith and gone, right, it's time to do that, you know. Especially at Co-op, you know, I decided I didn't want to work for, you know, a big corporate organisation anymore. I wanted to set up my own business, and it was a dream that I'd always had. So it's just having that, I guess, that faith and trusting you, that gut feeling that it's all right, and you can make that change.
Would you say that, Pav, just picking up on that, having a mentor is a particularly good thing to have in this industry, as a woman as well? And you said you've got a male mentor, which is fantastic, because I know there's some fantastic men in the industry out there, and I think actually men really bigging up women in the sector, whatever it may be, communications or not, is really important. But having that mentor has been good for you, and would you advise that to other people in communications?
110%. Honestly, I really, really would, because and the fact that he is male, actually, you know, and when I have been in situations when you think, you know, God, this is a big meeting, and, you know, I know it's going to be predominantly male men that I've got to get this idea through to, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, he's just, it really does help. Like I said, you'll often know the answer, but it's just having that person that you can turn to, and just to get a bit of validation that what you're doing is all right and you're going to be fine. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I really, really do. I really do.
Good. Yeah, I've got a kind of, I've never really said he's my mentor, but somebody who got me a job many years ago, and we still keep in touch, and ever I'm at a crossroads or want some advice, he's always, you know, at the end of the phone, and he's fantastic, and he always gives me a big pat on the back and really supportive. So I think that's really important, isn't it?
That's it. And that's what I mean with the Allies Academy. That's why, you know, these students, we've given them mentors from a very young point in their career, and we'd like to think that these individuals remain their mentors as they go through their career, you know. And I think that, because I've had that and I know what it's meant. So yeah, I think it is really important.
And I'll continue with you, Warren, with you in a minute. In terms of sort of confidence within the communications industry, whether you're just starting out or you're in a more senior position, how would you give advice to somebody about not feeling inferior or lacking confidence? Because I think that's sometimes something that women kind of have, not feeling good enough, and they shouldn't be in that position. What advice would you give to somebody feeling maybe like this at the moment in time?
You know, we've run several webinars on imposter syndrome, and I think especially, God, after, you know, people working from home or being put on furlough and then having to go back into work, it's really challenging. And, you know, you've gone back to being mum, haven't you, for like, you know, so many hours of the day rather than work. So, you know, I think the only advice I would know is, you don't know. A female actually that worked at P&G many years ago said to me, I said, so how are you so confident? How do you always come across so confident? She said, you know what? I don't know everything. I don't, you know, and I always look at other people and go, God, I wish I was as good as they were, you know, in finance or whatever it might be. She said, but you just have to appreciate they're looking at you thinking, God, I wish I was in a marketeer just like this woman. You know, you can't be good at everything, but ultimately, I've always, if I've not known something, I've gone out there and I've taught myself. I've put myself through night courses and to top up any qualifications I've got, so that I'm not in an environment people go, well, you're not good enough because you don't know that, or you haven't got that on your CV, or you haven't got that qualification, you know. And I think you've just got to, yeah, just believe in yourself, I think, really.
We can all get that imposter syndrome, can't we? And then you have to take a step back and think, you know, I can do this, it's fine, and
yeah,
I'm okay. Gemma, have you ever felt the imposter syndrome or lacking in confidence, or have you got any advice to anybody who would feel like that sort of in this sector?
Yeah, definitely. And I think comms is it's a showy industry, isn't it? You learn to sort of have a work face, and I think that really helps with confidence. That, you know, I go into meetings with people who have been making telly for 30-40 years, and I've been in it for 12-13 years, but put on a show and convince them that their campaigns in the right hands and what have you, and it's fine. But the whole time, it's that whole swan thing, isn't it? The whole time I'm hating it.
Secret face
on that, yeah.
So Carmel, obviously you seem always so calm and confident. What are your views on imposter syndrome?
Oh gosh, definitely have it. Big style. But I think you, going back to what both Gemma and Pavan have said, you've just got to believe in yourself and trust your own instincts and be clear about what you stand for. Actually, stand for something. I think that's really important. Know what it is that matters to you and what you will and won't put up with. I'd say don't allow a fear of things to hold you back. So if a task or a project or an opportunity frightens you, go for it, take it on, because it will never frighten you again. You know, go for all the opportunities that are going to really help you, and you'll look back and think, oh, thank God I did that, because I really regret it if I hadn't taken it on. So I'm not calm all the time, but a bit like Gemma's saying, you've got the public face, haven't you? And yeah, you kind of hang in there and be clear on what matters to you, and I think that will see you through and look after other people, and that comes back to you.
I think, Pav, you'd agree with that, wouldn't you? I know we've spoken before about like believing in other people, and I think how we treat other people will come back to us, like Carmel just said. So what we give out perhaps would come back to us.
Absolutely, firm believer of that. I think you've got to be good in business, haven't you? You've got to be a nice person in business. I've come across so many people that are arrogant or, you know, not very nice, you know, and I think they're the people that are memorable, and they're the people that you don't want to work with again, you know, and just be fair and a good business person. And I think, you know, people want to work with you then, don't they? Simple as that.
Okay.
And Carmel, just going back to your career, what would you say the highs and the lows have been so far for you in terms of the most memorable moments, for good or for bad?
I mean, it was a wonderful adventure working for Channel 4. It was a year's contract I took. I was head of comms at the time at a local authority, and I took a punt on a year's contract, and it ended up going on for 4 years. So, and it was just this completely other world of working across a bonkers partnership, complex partnership of television, community, local authorities, funders, Kevin MacLeod, and just trying to manage all sorts of different agendas and trying to make sense of it and protect the reputation of the channel ultimately was my role, but manage both on a micro level and a macro level. So that was fantastic experience. And it, you know, to be fair, it opened doors for me. And on the back of that, I was invited in to help develop the course at Sheffield Hallam. So that was probably a career highlight. But lots of little things. I think earlier on in my career, I worked for Derbyshire County Council's press office, and I was lucky enough to be assigned to the Children and Family Services portfolio. So got to work on really meaty stuff around helping recruit foster carers and adopters, which you meet some inspirational people who look after kids who've had a terribly difficult start in life, encouraging people to claim the benefits they're entitled to. You're making a difference to people's lives a little bit, if I don't oversell it, but it just feel like it's rewarding and it's actually making a difference. So those sort of things are really lovely, but on a much smaller scale. And then working with students now, the most rewarding thing is I'm assessing presentations this afternoon. Oh, and it's the best bit of my job, because I get to see them bring forward the stuff that we've been talking about and working on for the last sort of couple of months in very difficult circumstances. Bless them, they've worked so hard to get their heads around new tech and doing things via Zoom. And I saw the first tranche of them yesterday, and they were brilliant. And it was just so lovely seeing young people blossom, gaining confidence, gaining skills, and doing really well. And then, you know, every now and again they come back to you and say, oh, I'm working for an agency, oh, and I've got this great job. And that's probably actually the most rewarding thing, is seeing them go on to do great things. So yeah, doesn't get any better than that.
Sounds great. Pav, what about you? What's been the best high and the worst sort of low in your professional career?
I guess launching Allies was a big high for me, because it was a sort of a dream to have, you know, my own business, but not only my own business, but to run it with, you know, my husband and daughter. So that's a massive high. And I don't think I've had that many lows. I think I've had difficult times in, I think when I took the role at Poundland, that was, you know, working in Willinghall in the Midlands, being away from family, kids, my husband for 4 days a week, and you know, certain females around me did frown that upon the fact that I was working away as a female 4 days a week and not at home looking after the kids and being with Rick. But ultimately, Rick was incredibly supportive, and it was something that was right for me at that point in my career, and he was incredibly proud of me and supportive, and it was almost a case of, well, we're all right, this is okay for our family. So I'm quite lucky in that respect that Rick works in the same industry and gets, because I think you need that support at home as well, and that encouragement at home that it's all right for you to have a career and for you to be successful. So yeah.
Thank you. And Gemma, what about you?
I think probably the biggest high is after working in London for the best part of 12 years, being able to move back north to be closer to my family and things, and also to be able to maintain working within the media, which at the time when I made that decision didn't think was going to be possible. And now after working for the BBC in Salford, Channel 4 in Leeds, and being involved with companies like the RTS who are working with younger people to sort of to show them that you don't necessarily now need to relocate to London to work in the media, and that's been really fulfilling so far.
Now I want to pick up on that, just moving on from that. How do people, you know, like yourselves, look after your own wellness and health? And it's become more apparent over the last couple of years, really, but I think in the last few months, people working from home have had more time to maybe go on walks and do other things, explore nature, switch off, hopefully. And I think women, when you've got children or not, have always been trying to juggle so much more, maybe prove themselves and work that little bit harder. What do you think the sort of secret is to keeping yourself well, both in sort of body and mind, really?
My kids are all grown up. My kids are like big and 30 and 30 plus, so they're kind of doing their own thing, which is great. So it's my time now, and I live on the East Coast in Scarborough. I'm working from home at the moment, and I go sea swimming. I do a lot of sea swimming, so around the year round with a lovely group of people. There's about 30, 40, 50 of us. The numbers growing the whole time, and it's absolutely amazing. And I've probably saved my mental health during the lockdown period, because I don't know if you know anything about it, but the impact of cold water swimming is quite profoundly beneficial to your mental health as well as your physical health. So that's kept me on the straight and narrow, and lots of sea cliff walking and taking in the landscape. And I think the secret is getting a bit of balance in your life, because, you know, when you work from home, you can just work all the time. Force yourself to take that interval out, see something gorgeous, go walking amongst some trees, go see some water, and that really does help you cope and keep that kind of balance going.
You're so brave. And I've got a friend in Wales, she was sending me pictures the other day. She keeps going swimming out in the seas. I'm like, I'd love to do it. I don't know if I'm brave enough yet, but maybe take you up on it. And Pav, what about you? I mean, what's the secret to sort of keeping, you know, your mind and body healthy and well, as a woman or a male, really, to sort of work and have that balance?
Yeah, exercise for me. I mean, especially when I worked at Poundland, 4 days of being away from home, it's very easy to sit at your desk because you've not got anybody to go home to. You know, but for me, I got PT at the time, and I exercised 3 times a week, and it kept me physically and mentally strong. It really did, because it was quite a challenging role. And I take a lot of time out. You know, I think giving your brain some rest and some peace is really important, you know, because I go to sleep thinking about work and I wake up thinking about work. So I find it quite important for me mentally to just have that time out, because if I didn't, God knows what would happen. But yeah, so I meditate. I've started meditating. I've got, you know, the usual apps on my phone and all that kind of stuff. So, and it helps. It really does help. So yeah, just give yourself some downtime, I think, you know, switch off the brain.
Yeah. It is important, I think. And Gemma, I can imagine you must get so many emails and be busy and maybe switched on looking at your phone. Do you try and switch off a little bit, or have you got any, you know, put your phone away for a few hours, or do you one of those looking at night doing emails? And
yeah, I am. I became one of the statistics over the spring, who did one of the millions who did Couch to 5K, and I've continued running, which I never thought I would ever get into, which has really helped to do that first thing in the morning, but in an evening I am sort of phone still in my hand.
Yeah, it's hard, I think, isn't it? But I think then if you like do have a break at some point, you're doing the catch to 5K, which is fantastic, and maybe catch up on emails later, you have that balance, don't you? And you give yourself some time to recover, because I think everybody needs that. You can really burn out.
And I would just love to ask, I know we're running short of time now, each of you, what you are hoping for from 2021? Pav, can we start with you?
Oh gosh, you know what? Business has been tough this year, and it has been for a lot of the creative industry, you know. But we're filming again, and you know things are picking up, and clients are getting more confidence that, you know, with the vaccine and etc., that things might get back to some kind of normality. I'm looking forward to having people in the office. I'm looking forward to networking. You know, we had a big Christmas party last year for all of our freelancers, you know, which you came to, and like, you know, just doing some of that stuff again where you can touch, feel, be around people, all of that kind of stuff is what I'm desperately looking forward to, you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's that feeling, isn't it? We've all learned really about the power of just like being tactile and having people around us, and you know, it can be quite insular, can't it, without that as well. And Carmel, how about you? What are you most looking forward to about next year?
Well, it might not be next year, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to hug someone? You know, that kind of human contact. It's so strange not being able to do the normal human things. So once we're all safe, being able to hug your family, your friends, your loved ones would be brilliant. I'd love to see my colleagues. I want to work less and work more smartly, and I'd like to keep the best bits of the working remotely, because I think that offers us signposts for doing things differently and in some respects better. So yeah, a few things in there on the human level and work level. But I think hug's top of my list.
Hugs, top of the list. Love
Oh,
that.
I know, I miss hugs. I'm quite a huggy person. I'm like, miss it. Just like this, everybody. Give me a hug. And I think we're coming to the end now, so we'll probably wrap up. But I just want you to ask you all, what do you think the landscape looks like for women in comms as we move forward into 2021, post-COVID or whatever world we're in? But how would you like to see the world for women in communications as we move forward? And I'll start with you, Carmel.
We're making inroads, but it's not an even picture. And as we know, there's lots of work going on in the professional bodies, PRCA, CIPR, doing lots of work and shining a spotlight on the diversity and equality issue. You know, predominantly an industry dominated by women, but we're not in the top jobs. That's not okay, and that has to change. And I think we need to keep driving that, and there needs to be more emphatic buy-in from the industry to make that different. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it makes good business sense to have an industry that's properly diverse and reflects the society that we operate in. That works so much better. So I'd like to see more inroads made into that. We look the gender pay gap thing as well. You know, it's getting better, but it's not as it should be. So that needs to speed up. These things need to be tackled, and I think that's down to all of us really to kind of keep banging the drum and try and press for those sorts of changes.
Great. And Gemma, what about you? Is there anything you want to add on to that?
I suppose, well, just to add, it'd be really nice to see more young talent being really harvested. You know, everybody's obsessed with the moving to digital, and it's younger people coming through who have all these digital skills and attributes that, you know, it's a mystery to me, half of it. And I think they're the people who we really need to sort of empower and give them really strong career paths, because again, within the media, it's one of those situations where you're always waiting for somebody to leave before there's any sort of opportunity for progression, which is probably why it's still men in charge. Yeah.
And Pav, what about you? What's your thoughts for looking forward?
100%. And I think, you know, again, I think interesting on the student side of things, they've had a tough year this year. You know, a lot of them coming out of university with not the work experiences and the opportunities that they might have had previously. You know, so I'd like to see, you know, that change, and for people to put their arms around not only people graduating, the students graduating next year, but those that have graduated this year, because they may not have had the opportunities that they might have had previously. So Yeah, I think that, and just more transparency within organisations. You know, what do you earn when you get to this level? What do you, and you know, and for that to be transparent, and you know, not just, well, he's a man and he's earning this, and actually, am I earning as much? Well, we should know that, shouldn't we? We should know that that's what the pay structure is within an organisation. So.
And also, I think we're all, you know, you might say that as a woman, we've all got our parts to play as well. And I was telling Gemma earlier that I recently interviewed Jane Garvey from Radio 4, Woman's Hour, who basically drilled it into me that it is my duty as a woman over the next few years to keep up the fight for equal pay. And, you know, and I absolutely agree. So I do think perhaps you could argue that actually some of that responsibility does fall for us to keep, you know, the flag flying and to keep the ball rolling, as Carmel, you so rightly said before. Has anybody got any other questions before we go? Because I'm very aware it's almost lunchtime and we're almost out of time. Well, I'd just like to thank everybody so much for being here this morning. And Lisa, would you like to follow up with anything else before we go?
No, I just want to say it was really, really interesting. I think as a woman working, you know, PRCA and in communications, I've really valued your time and the points that you made. And hopefully we can keep continuing this conversation and banging the drum for women, and making and creating more opportunities and looking after those around us. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet everyone. Lovely to meet and stay safe and have a lovely restful break, I think, over the holiday period.
Thank you. Well, we just had a thank you on here, I think, from Caroline from Chester Zoo, who we did an event with actually a few weeks ago. So thanks for joining us, Caroline. Yeah, it was really interesting. Enjoy your swimming, Carmel, over Christmas.
Anytime you fancy a nice cold sea, you know where I am.
Maybe.
Barbara, when we get back to tier 3 where I am. Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.